What happens if the Supreme Court reverses itself and we do away with marriage equality?
Hi, I'm Jeff Marsacci, the Plain English Attorney, and you're at the #1 place to get simple answers to complex questions. We cover topics for attorneys, financial advisors, and the general public around estate and Medicaid planning, as well as some best practices for professionals. Our mission is to dispel myths, provide you some peace of mind, and hopefully have some fun along the way.
Hi, this is Jeff Marsacci, the Plain English Attorney, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about some questions I've been getting from clients and colleagues and friends. What happens if the Supreme Court reverses itself and we do away with marriage equality? That's actually a pretty complex question. First of all, it would absolutely create a mess. It would, because it's definitely been several years since we've had marriage equality. People have been getting married nationwide, and then suddenly to say, no, you no longer have that right, that would be extremely disruptive, which actually makes it a lot less likely that it will happen. But then again, we've seen some pretty big stretches coming out from the Supreme Court in the last couple of decades. So yeah, it could definitely get messy. Now, what that would mean is there's no constitutional right for same-gender partners to end up getting married. Okay, just because there's not a federal constitutional right to get married, that doesn't mean that a state that has state law saying, yes, same-gender couples get married here, it's not going to invalidate those laws. It's going to take a federal law that was on the books and got overturned in the marriage equality cases that said no state has to recognize another state's same-sex marriage if their state does not have same-sex marriage. So in other words, if Massachusetts allowed and had same-sex marriage and you could go to Massachusetts as a same-sex couple and get married, okay, that's a valid marriage in Massachusetts. But there's nothing saying that North Carolina has to recognize that as a valid marriage. Again, we're going back to what we had before, which was a mess. But the other thing is, it doesn't mean that marriages will end up being dissolved if during that period we had marriage equality, that they did in fact get married. What may end up being even more of a mess is whether or not now, if someone got married in North Carolina under the marriage equality ruling saying, yes, you have to be allowed to get married as a same-sex couple, and then there's another state, Tennessee, say, that also did not permit under their state law same-sex couples getting married. If the North Carolina couple moved to Tennessee, even if it was during that period where we had national constitutional right marriage equality, would they have to recognize it? That's much more of a toss-up. So yeah, we really are potentially dealing with a mess. Now, what are some solutions if we end up going into this area and we end up going backwards? Well, if we end up having to look backwards, we can go and look to my very first book that I put together, Estate Planning for Domestic Partners, which it's still up on Amazon. Hasn't had many sales in recent years because you haven't had to. In fact, it was kind of defunct in terms of the usefulness of the book because, well, if you can get married or if you don't get married, Estate Planning Basics is the book that I've been having my clients take a look at and read. So maybe we have to go back to that. What that would entail is couples that want to be joined in a union, but the state is just not going to let them, and there's no marriage equality. Well, now we're talking about going back to having to do joint revocable living trusts, having to do reciprocal powers of attorney for healthcare and for finances, and separate property agreements and all of this other stuff that had to be in place prior to those marriage equality rulings just to get those rights. Now, I advise you go ahead and do this kind of planning anyway, just because you don't actually get a ton of rights just by being married, nor are those rights as extensive as a lot of people believe. And if you think, oh, well, I can get married and I don't have to do any of that power of attorney stuff, go down to a bank where your spouse has a separate account and go ahead and try to take their money out. They're not going to let you. You have a power of attorney and suddenly you can. So it might be a good idea to take a look at all of those materials and the planning where some couples were like, well, we got married, we'll get around to it. You might want to look at it sooner rather than later. If you stayed with us all the way to the end, please go ahead and hit like, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, and go ahead and if you've got any questions, go ahead and leave a comment for us, or go ahead and message the law firm. The more questions we get, the more we can put information out there in these types of videos. So as always, stay safe, plan ahead, and enjoy life.
We hope you found that information useful and easy to understand. To keep getting this great information, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. To get even more information more quickly, follow the links below to some of our free, no obligation programs.